How many of you guys have been to the Grand Canyon? And how did you feel? Were you pretty amazed? Maybe you were underwhelming for you? Well, when I went, I remember the feeling of not being able to see both ends at the same time. I was pretty amazed, not only by the canyon, but by a couple other things that I saw. And one was a California condor. Now, of course, when I was there, I just thought it was a huge bird, but I thought it was pretty cool. And when we hopped into the car to go to the next destination, I thought that I might research a little bit and see what he's all about. And my interest only grew from there. Now, the California condor, as we can all probably guess, lives in California and other surrounding areas, living mostly down by your coasts and up in your mountains in the forests and meadows. They can soar up to 6,000 feet high and live to be 60 years old, which is pretty old when you think about all the other animals in the animal kingdom. They're often black and white, as you can see here, with their defining feature being their bald head. And they're actually really important to the ecosystem, and that's because they are scavengers. And this basically means that they'll find dead animal carcasses and eat them. And that sounds kind of gross, but they're basically just the garbage men of nature. And that's really important to the ecosystem because, you know, if the condors weren't doing their job, then these dead animals would pile up, leaving no prey for the bigger animals, and they kind of put that food back into the food web. Now, as I kept researching them, I noticed that their numbers were pretty low, and I didn't really understand. In 1982, there was only 22 condors left in the world. They were pretty imminent that they were going to go extinct. But after more research, I found a couple ways why their numbers were decreasing. Now, first, of course, they were decreasing from habitat loss and deforestation, a thing that many animals suffer from. And yeah, the condor basically, its mountain habitats, such as its forests and meadows, were getting encroached on, getting intruded, leaving it to not have a home. It also was getting, the numbers were declining through lead poisoning. And this was actually really confusing to me because, yeah, I wasn't the smartest ninth grader at the time, but I knew that these birds probably weren't just going underground and eating lead. And I found that there was actually two ways that they were getting this lead poisoning. One was from microtrash. Now, microtrash is basically just small, shiny, reflective, colorful pieces of trash that get left on the ground. And the condor, of course, thinks this is food. It'll swoop down, try and eat it, and of course we all know it's not going to go well. Another way that they get microtrash is through their scavenger ways. Now, they eat these dead carcasses that they find on the ground, but sometimes these are a product from hunting, and you know, not all hunters are exactly the most on top of it, and some of them use lead bullets. Now, of course, when the condor tries and eat this carcass that has the lead bullet, it's going to get that lead poisoning through it, and in the end, it's not going to be too great for that condor. But the sad story doesn't end here, because ever since 1992, the San Diego Zoo, along with many others, have been reintroducing condors back into the wild, and as of 2014, at least 425 condors remain in the world today, so their numbers have pretty much skyrocketed. Now, that's great, but you know, why have they grown so exponentially? And it's great that they have a lot of, you know, their numbers are growing, but is the population sustainable? Well, one way they do it is through double clutching. And this basically means that when the mama condor lays an egg, the zookeeper will take the egg, and when it hatches, raises it with a puppet. So the baby condor, as you can see here, knows no different. It's just living normal life and never actually gets any human interaction. It's fed with puppets, it hears different sounds of condors, stuff like that, to mimic its natural habitat, so it never, you know, it seems like it's normal life to them. And for the mama condor, when it comes back to the nest and sees her egg missing, it'll incentivize her to lay another one. And this leads to, you know, those double birth rates and those exploding numbers in population. So that's great, but is it sustainable? And, you know, humans have done a lot to make sure that it has. Of course, they support different organizations and go to zoos and talk about these guys so that really, you know, people know about them. But they also do their best to reduce microtrash. That is, you know, when they're on that hike and they finish drinking that water bottle, they'll screw back on that cap and recycle it to make sure that it doesn't end up in their environments. Or when they're eating that Cliff Bar, they'll make sure the wrapper goes in their pocket or their backpack and not left on the trail, so these guys don't try and eat it. And especially with hunters, there's new regulations every day to make sure that they're responsible in how they hunt and it doesn't end up hurting these guys. Now, from all of this, we have seen an explosion. Thanks, the Fish and Wildlife Services have predicted that at least 75 new condors have been introduced into the world between 2010 and 2016. And that's really great for them. Their numbers are going to keep growing as time goes on. Now, we've seen a lot of great ways that humans not only help condors, but many other animals. And I challenge you, what can you do? Thanks.